Hey, folks, welcome to the Adventure Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Mason. Today's episode is a throwback to when Travis and Kurt was hosting. And funny enough, this is kind of a rare one. Travis was hosting this episode. And really cool twist on the Colorado 14ers Challenge, which is all the mountains in Colorado over 14,000 feet. And there's like 58 of them. And Junaid and his partner, adventure partner, that is, climbed them all. And not only climbed them, but walked in between them, made it a Thru-Hike, which is just a really unique twist on the 14ers Challenge. And so this is a throwback. This is one of the coolest adventures I had heard of at the time. And I've actually tried to do something like this, but instead of walking between them, I tried to bike between them. And I got to like a third of the way through before my body just couldn't keep up. The weather was terrible, and I was probably a little bit of a weenie too. But I got through about 20 of them. Yeah, it was quite an experience. So to think about doing that and walking between them, hundreds, that's, probably 1,000 miles of walking by the time you're all done, plus all the elevation of climbing. That's all on trail and off trail, all that. So yeah, really big, really cool adventure. And also I did something unique yesterday. If you haven't checked it out, I did almost a trip report and kind of an explanation of this very small adventure in comparison to today's episode of something I did a couple weeks ago. And holy cow, I think that was the most downloads, which is our metric in podcasting for listens. The only way we can know how many people listen is how many people download the podcast episode. And that was the most by a long shot that we've ever had in a single day. So I don't know what it was about that episode. If you haven't listened to it, listen to it. You might think, actually, this isn't very good. It's just me talking into a mic for like 45 minutes. It was very weird for me to do. I like talking to a guest. I prefer that. But I tried something new, and y'all seem to like it. If anybody can give me feedback onto what you liked about it, if anyone's listening, please email me or message us on Instagram or something. I want to know what you liked. What was there? Because I want to do more of that if it was well received. Maybe not me talking, maybe other people sharing trip reports or just something. But I checked out the numbers this morning and I was like, holy crap, there's something here. I'm talking like double the amount of downloads that we usually get in a day. And it set a new record for us. So thank you. And it was a lot of fun. And I'll say this, as a seasoned adventurer, that 12-hour experience, basically 24 hours that I was away from home to do this, was every bit of fulfilling and every bit of fun adventure as some of my multi-month trips. I don't know how to explain it. It's like it's the same. It's a piece of the same pie. Yes, it's a smaller piece, but when I'm out on an adventure, I'm not getting you don't, when you're out there for like a month, like Junaid is for this episode, you're not getting all of that adventure at once. You're getting it one moment at a time. And so even if you're out on an adventure for a couple hours or a day or a weekend, you're still getting the same amount of adventure one moment at a time, one moment at a time. So instead of that, it's the same cadence. It's the same input frequency, I guess you could say. And so it's really cool to experience that in little short windows, like a day here or a day there or an evening here. And what's cool about that is you don't have to wait for the summer, or you don't have to wait for your retirement or whatever. You can do it more frequently. So you can almost get more adventure by just breaking it up into smaller chunks and doing it more often, which might be more possible for you right now versus a really long, big experience somewhere really far away. So I encourage you to check out that format and kind of try to replicate it if that's the position in life you're in. But by all means, if you've got a window, if you got the money, you got the time, you've got the opportunity to do something a lot bigger, a lot longer, definitely go for it. Those are life-changing experiences. But if you don't, you still got to go for it, because it's the same thing. It's the same flavor. It's the same piece of pie, just a smaller chunk, but you can have it more often. So anyway, enough with my rant. Let's get into today's really awesome, really epic adventure.
Welcome to another episode of the Adventure Sports Podcast. This is your host, Travis Parsons. Some people spend their lifetime attempting to climb every one of Colorado's 14,000-foot peaks, and many never get close. In 2013, Junaid Dawud and his friend Luke set out to summit each and every 14er in one single trip. Junaid is here with me today to tell us all about it. Junaid, welcome to the Adventure Sports Podcast.
Hey, thanks.
So, you guys have trail names. Let's start out with what your trail name is and how did you come about it?
Well, I actually have a trail name, but Luke did not have a trail name. We really didn't use him on the 14ers hike since nobody was really out there, so to speak. My trail name is Special 41, and I got it on the Pacific Crest Trail in 2006, and it was basically after making a smart aleck comment, about being special because my mommy said so, and and I kind of got stuck with it after that. At first, I was resistant, and then I made an agreement, and then I still didn't really think that I was going to keep it. It was going to change or something, but it's really grown on me, and there are definitely a number of people who know me first as special.
That's funny. I imagine a lot of trail names go with resistance at first until people agree to adopt them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a little odd when you're out there at first. You're like, oh, I don't want to just get a trail name for anything. And so people, and some people obviously never take a trail name, but I think they're kind of great. It's a lot easier to remember a name like Railroad or something than Bob, so.
Yeah, and they always provide a good backstory, something to break the ice with people too. So when's Luke going to get his trail name?
I don't know if he will. If he ends up doing any more distance hiking, he may or may not end up getting one. We'll see.
Okay. So take a few minutes to tell us about yourself and what got you started. What got you hooked on through hiking and climbing 14ers?
I always kind of was brought up going outside a little bit. We used to go camping, and for a little while we were actually living in our property in tents before we got a house in town. So for probably a good 5 months while I was a teenager, we actually lived outside. I was also in the Boy Scouts during middle school. I went on a few pretty great trips with them, some rafting trips and a couple of trips up to Mount St. Helens and things like that. So I definitely had the outdoors to some degree in my upbringing. When I got older, I moved out to Hawaii to go to college, and it was definitely out there on the trails around Honolulu and some of the surrounding islands as well, where I really kind of became a real hiker.
That's cool. So you've been able to experience hiking in a few different parts, at least on the west side of the states. What would you say is still your most favorite place to hike?
Oh man, there's so many great places. I mean, honestly, anywhere that somebody is, there's probably a great hike within a half an hour to an hour drive of where they are. On the West Coast, there's obviously lots of pretty iconic spots. You've got the areas around Crater Lake and, Goat Rocks Wilderness in Washington. The John Muir Trail, I think, is some of the finest hiking trail in the U.S. Obviously, in Hawaii, there's some pretty fantastic views, but the trail is not always that great. A lot of times it's just a ridge with a muddy path, if that. But there's some pretty amazing hiking to be had out in Hawaii as well.
That's cool. Yeah, I need to get out to Hawaii. It's one of those on my bucket list.
Yeah,
in due time.
It's definitely worth the time.
So tell me a lot more, actually, about this trip that you guys did in 2013. What made you decide to do this? I mean, it's a pretty serious endeavor. Most people, like I said, attempt to do it in a lifetime, and you guys decided to do it in a single trip. How did that all kick off?
Well, so I originally moved to Colorado after having completed the Pacific Crest Trail in 2006, and then in 2007 I finished the miles that I hadn't done in 2006. So after having completed the PCT once, I moved to Colorado, ended up hiking it again with a friend of mine and going all the way through that time. And a couple of years later, I was really feeling like I hadn't been able to take advantage of living in Colorado as far as climbing 14ers and climbing peaks, which was really one of the reasons that I moved to the state in the first place. In 2012, I was already sort of thinking about my next hike and what I wanted it to be, and I had originally thought I would hike the Continental Divide Trail in 2013, but after sort of a day when we took the dog to the lake, I remember sitting in the back seat and we were going along, and the dog gets crazy as we cross the highway, because it realizes then that, like, oh, we're going to the lake. So right about the time the dog started going nuts, I remember just this idea of, like, well, you're not climbing the 14ers like you wanted to, and you want to hike. So, like, why don't you just hike to all of the 14ers? And I remember thinking the thought and immediately thinking, I wonder if you even can. And it went from sort of the curiosity of, I wonder whether I could do that, or wonder whether it can be done, what the mileage would be, what the terrain looks like, the whole bit. So the more I started thinking about it, the more I thought, yeah, that can be done. There's no logistical reason it can't be. And then it was sort of a matter of, well, do I feel like I'm up to that challenge? And, I had at that point completed the Pacific Crest Trail twice. I've definitely climbed some 14ers before. I'm a pretty good rock climber. I deal really well with elevation. I had been living in Aspen for a few years, and a lot of times working up on top of the mountain in Aspen. So, I had a pretty good feeling for how I dealt with things at elevation. And it sort of just went from curiosity to an obsession to planning. And before I knew it, it was all right, let's do this.
So you convinced your buddy Luke to join in. How was that difficult?
It wasn't difficult. I mean, it took a little bit of time for, after I kind of had a short list of people that I thought maybe I'd invite along, because I wasn't really sure I wanted to try to do it as a solo trip.
Right.
Distance hiking can get lonely, and climbing 14ers can get dangerous. And I really thought it would be a good idea to have a partner for the trip. And Luke was basically at the top of the short list for people I knew that I thought had a good mountaineering background and would be able to cope when it came to the distance hiking aspects of it. And I asked him if he was into it, told him I was going to do it, and that I thought it'd be great if he'd come along and do it with me. And he thought about it for a little while and then said, yeah, all right. Took him a couple of weeks to sort of mull it over. And I think once he was convinced himself that it was possible, then it was a little easier for him to say, yeah, let's go ahead and do this.
Right. Okay. So I imagine that was a pretty short list then, because I can't think of many people that would go out, and tackle that endeavor. I mean, just climbing a single 14er is bad enough. Some of these can be pretty serious climbs. Others are fairly easy hikes, but to sit there and do all 58 of them in one shot, that's like I said, that's got to be a pretty short list.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly not for everybody. I mean, I don't consider myself to be some sort of top-tier athlete or anything like that. I'm first and foremost a long-distance backpacker, and I really think that distance backpacking is something that most people can do. They might not be able to do it fast. They might not be able to do a bunch of high passes all the time, whatever the case may be. But primarily I'm a distance backpacker, and I enjoy climbing peaks. So honestly, I mean, I wasn't entirely sure I was the person to be able to do it until I got to the top of Long's Peak and finished it. Out on the PCT, I certainly met a number of pretty hardcore hikers and people that had some good experience. When I moved to Colorado, I met Luke, and it was, pretty apparent from the get-go that he and I would probably end up doing some adventures together. And so, I know that he had done some mountaineering, including in the Himalayas and South America. He's gone through some Knowles courses. He's done some things, and he enjoys long distance, like human powered kind of stuff. He's done relay races and mountain bike races, and enjoys doing ski tour races, all that kind of stuff. So he's he's pretty hardcore. He's definitely more hardcore than I would say.
Well, it makes a big difference when you can find somebody that you click with. There's got to be some trying times out there in that kind of hike that really puts you to the test mentally. If you don't have somebody there that can either deal with you or you can deal with them, then things can blow up pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Luke has a great temperament. He's got a sort of, that's what things are today kind of an attitude. And for the most part, I think we got along fantastically on the trip. We obviously, each of us had a couple of days throughout the journey where we were probably not very good company for the other, but I think that by and large we made a good team, in that when one of us was kind of having a down day, the other one would kind of be able to recognize that and sort of help keep the spirits buoyed or whatever, or in some cases just slow the pace so that, for instance, there was one day I was having some incredibly bad shin splint type pain, and he just kind of was like, "Hey man, yeah, we'll just slow down, we'll take it easy, we'll stretch, hydrate, make sure that you can, make it," and we did. So I really feel like we were pretty good at balancing out both each other's high and low points, as well as being able to sort of balance out each other's skill sets for the trip.
Yeah, that's a huge benefit. Well, it's a testament too that you guys are still buddies after all that. So I think you must have had a good thing going in to begin with. That's cool. So has anybody, to your knowledge, attempted this hike before you guys?
So there were two guys that actually did something pretty similar, although I didn't find any real record of it until after we had completed. I'd found like one paragraph on the internet somewhere about some guys who had done some kind of a walking tour in 1985. After we completed the trip, we found out from a college paper, I believe up in Fort Collins, that there had been, back in 1985, 3 guys that started and 2 guys that finished it. They did I believe the list of 53 that was then standard, and also raised money for a charity with their hike. So there were some interesting parallels. I actually ended up getting in touch with the fellow that was mentioned in the paper and chatted with him a little bit. And I look forward to hopefully meeting up with him at some point and being able to swap maps and look at photos and things like that, and kind of see the similarities and differences, because the 2 trips happened, obviously, 30 years apart. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, it'd be neat to compare notes and see which order they had done them in, the time that they had done them, and all that good stuff. So you never managed to meet up with them?
No, I haven't met up with them. Life sort of gets in the way of things sometimes, and I haven't really been in touch with them for a while. Not since a couple of weeks after I found out about their trip.
Let's take a quick message break and hear from the folks that help make this show possible. One thing you might not know about me is I can get down with some cowboy boots. On the weekends, I like to kind of explore my countryside a little bit. I grew up in the country near cattle farms and ranches, so I've spent my fair share of time around cowboy boots and appreciate high-quality boots. And that's why I'm a big fan of Tecovas. Tecovas is my favorite boot brand. They're bringing a fresh perspective to heritage boot making. They carry on time-honored traditions and quality that you find in a great pair of cowboy boots, but they've innovated on comfort, style, and service. Their Western boots for men and women are handmade from the most premium leathers and over 200 time-honored individual steps, and their service is unmatched. If you go into the store, you're greeted like family, offered a boot shine and a drink, and you can get custom fitted for a new pair of boots right there. You can find all their store locations at tecovas.com. And if you can't make it into the store, Tecovas delivers the most premium quality and most comfortable Western goods right to your door. Visit tecovas.com. That's TECOVAS.com and point your toes west. That is plenty of that for now. Let's get back into the episode.
I assumed you guys added up the distance of this entire hike. Did you go on Google Earth or something and lay out the whole thing to find out how far you actually did travel?
Sort of, yeah. So what I did is I pieced together all of the bits that we had, which were basically each day we'd turn on the GPS, but it would record as separate tracks. So I put those all into a Garmin program. And also kind of cross-checked it in CalTopo to sort of try to figure out what the true distances and elevation gains were. But all told, it looked like it was about 1,350 miles from the beginning all the way until we'd sort of exited after completing the peaks. Officially, we sort of designated the peak of Culebra and the peak of Longs to be the starting point and the finishing point. But including the climbs and descents of those two peaks, it ended up being about 1,350.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think you're allowed to add that in.
Yeah. So
that's a heck of a trek.
Yeah, and all told, we're not entirely sure what the elevation gain was. The mapping software is, I don't think, terribly conclusive, and I've definitely had some other people tell me that they think it's actually higher than we've said. Our GPS only goes up to 100,000 feet, and after that, it doesn't measure additional elevation gain.
Not too many people have that problem.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously it's not going to be an issue for most users, but for us, it was like, oh no, well, we don't really know. But according to the mapping software, it was somewhere north of 300,000 feet.
Wow, that's crazy. That's just got to blow your mind to sit back some days and think about that at times. I mean, you're the one that did it, and it's in your past, a couple years in your past, but don't you just sit there and think about that from time to time, just thinking, how did I do that? That's amazing.
Oh, sure. I mean, well, I don't think there's many days that go by that I don't think of one of my long distance endeavors, either one of my PCT hikes or the 14ers hike. And the 14ers hike in particular is, in some ways, feels almost disconnected. It was so intense, and 72 days is long, but it was relatively fast as well. So yeah, I mean, I think about it. It still amazes me sometimes that we managed to pull it off, that we got lucky enough, that we physically were able to do it, that we were mentally able to do it. Yeah, it's every time I look at Long's Peak, I certainly get a little bit nostalgic and kind of go, wow, dude, yeah, that really happened.
Yeah, I feel you there. I certainly haven't climbed all 58 peaks, but I have climbed Longs, and it was one of the hardest things I've done in my life, just that one peak, and living just right at the foot of it and looking up at it. There are many, many days where I just look up and think, yeah, that was a great day. It was brutal, but it was great. They make for fond memories for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of have this idea that everybody should, at least once in their life, try to do something that they think is amazing. Impress yourself. Do it safely, people, but impress yourself. And I definitely feel like I at least accomplished that.
Yeah, I would hope so. That's one to take with you. So you've done the PCT a couple times, and you've done this crazy hike of 1,350 miles across all 58 14ers. So does that mean you haven't done the Continental Divide Trail or the Pacific Crest Trail yet?
Well, I haven't done the Appalachian Trail or the Continental Divide Trail.
Oh, that's right. I said Pacific.
Yeah, I think
yes.
Probably next on the list is the Continental Divide Trail.
Okay. There's
really no shortage of hiking trips I'd like to do.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Given given the time and the money, I don't think I'd stop for very long at all.
So why would you encourage people that have never done a hike like this, or at least have never done a 14er climb? Why would you encourage them to get up and give it a go?
That's a great perspective. To get up on top of something like that. And I mean, for instance, most of the peaks, you can go up and they're not really a rock climb. You don't need to rope up for them. They're not super hairy. A lot of them, quite honestly, are long walks up that require a lot of heavy breathing. But most people can do that. And I'll tell you that feeling of getting to the top of a peak and just looking out at the amazing view and knowing that you used your body to get up there for that view. It's a great feeling. It's definitely one of accomplishment and one that gets a little bit addictive, I'd say. But it's great exercise. And man, you meet some great people when you're out there in the mountains too.
Yeah, that's very true. And I like that you bring up the point about, it's about getting there and feeling like you can accomplish something. It doesn't have to be one of the steeper peaks and, one of the ones that you can fall to your death on. I've climbed Mount Huron, and that was just a beautiful walk on a beautiful day, and you get up and you see amazing views once you get up there. So yeah, I would say, if people haven't tried it, try a smaller mountain like that. You still get up there, you still get the views, but you're not exerting a ton of energy, and it gets you a feel for getting into the sport to see how you like it to begin with.
Yeah, absolutely. And as far as the hiking aspect of it goes, honestly, most people have got trails around them, and even if there aren't trails, there's usually Forest Service roads or BLM roads, and I think it's a good idea to get out and just walk in the places that you live. Check out the nearby trails, and even if it's only a half-hour walk, that's good for you. Gets your mind calmed, a little bit of sweat, a little bit of breathing, and I think everybody could use a little bit more of that in their life.
Nothing wrong with a little bit of exercise. So was there one amazing moment that you experienced that you just thought, I am here doing the right thing right now? This is really cool.
Well, honestly, I mean, there were a lot of them. For instance, most of the time, anytime we got to the top of a peak, it's a real punctuation of like emotion, right? All right, cool, one more, we did one more. I think when we got to the point that we realized we were counting down the number that we had left rather than counting up the number that we had completed, I think there was an interesting shift that day where it was like, oh man, we're not just trying to do it. We're mostly done at this point. We've only got 10 peaks left, or we've only got 8 peaks left, So that definitely, once we could sort of count them all on one hand, that was pretty fantastic.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Yeah. So
I didn't ask, how long did it actually take you guys to do this?
72 days.
Wow, that's a trip.
We had a few days off in there. Some of them, due to inclement weather. A couple of them were just planned rest days. But yeah, we had like one day where we needed to pick up a package, so we had to stay an extra day in town. We had another day that we went up, made camp, got severely snowed on. The next morning I was like, yeah, I don't think I want to climb a peak this day. Let's go on back down to town and we'll do this tomorrow. So we walked out and then came back the next day and went up and over Grays and Torreys.
Yeah, you probably enjoyed that day much more than you would have you had just set out that day, the snowy day.
Yeah, we were pretty good about making the most conservative call as far as whoever felt, like, oh, we should maybe not do this, which to be honest was me most of the time. It was usually me going, oh, I don't know, I think maybe we should just sit it out for the rest of the day and come at it fresh tomorrow. Like I said, Luke's a tougher guy than I am, and so for him, he was usually a little bit more, ready to go for things, and I was usually the one that was kind of like, well, I don't know, I think maybe let's make camp. I want to.
Well, you need that balance.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, I mean, it was great too. Just sometimes when we were, standing somewhere and trying to figure out, well, which way are we going to actually go here? How are we going to go about getting up this slope? Um, it was nice to be able to sort of bounce back and forth and say, well, what looks good to you? What looks good to me? And when we were both right on thinking the same thing, it was like, oh, okay, cool. Well, I feel a little bit better about the choices we're making here then. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. So did you guys were you elated when you finished? Did you feel disappointed when it was all over with? I know when I go on a long motorcycle ride or something, multi-day trip, it's that last day when you're coming back, you're thinking, I've got to stop. This can't be right. Was it like that, or were you guys just really truly done with the trip at that point?
I mean, both. It's always both. I think most people that have ever gotten, for instance, on the PCT, you get to the Canadian border and there's the monument, and most people stop there and hang out and spend some time. And I don't think there's any way to not feel a little bit regretful that it's over, because it represents such a high, amazing time in your life. But on the other hand, I mean, it's physically exhausting. You're tired of being dirty and sore. You want to see your family and friends. There's definitely, two sides to it. I was definitely ready to be done, in the sense that, like, I mean, I'd lost, 20, 25 pounds. I was tired. My back had also been kind of giving me a lot of problems for about the last, like, week of the trip. So yeah, I was ready to lay down, which is pretty much what I did when I got home. When I got home, I more or less laid on the floor for a week.
Yeah, I'll bet. You would think one person would want a nice cushy bed when they get off a trip like that, but you probably did the right thing.
Oh, well, I mean, I went from bed to floor and back and forth. Some eating in there as well.
Just relaxing, whatever it was relaxing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, how about a story when things didn't quite go right on that trip? There must have been a few hairy moments.
Well, I mean, like I said, there was for instance, the day that we went up Chihuahua Gulch, and made camp with the intention of climbing Torrey's and then Gray's Peak in the morning. And overnight, it snowed quite a bit, and we had good gear, but it was still not very great weather, and I wasn't really terribly comfortable with the idea of going up with the weather the way it was and the gear that we did have. We weren't outfitted for, like, full winter mountaineering or anything like that. So we went down to town and let it sort of, the weather settle and let everything melt out, and we went back up and got right over it without too much problem. So there was that. Honestly, one of the amazing things about the trip was how often things didn't go wrong. We by all rights should have gotten chased off a number of peaks by weather or lightning or something, and really it didn't happen. Luke got sick once at just after the Chicago Basin area. So that wasn't very cool. He got taken down by something he ate, and we woke up at about 6 o'clock in the morning, and he told me he'd been vomiting since midnight, and he looked terrible. So we ended up taking a 0 day that day and just getting a room, and letting him just sort of recharge, because he was, he's a pretty tough guy. To see him go down as hard as he did that day was pretty rough, and he suffered from it for a few days afterwards as well, just the loss of energy.
Yeah, I imagine that's taxing on a hike like this. It's good that you guys were within reach of civilization to be able to do that for the night. It could have happened in worse places, I'm sure.
Well, I mean, the irony was that it happened because of civilization. I mean, it didn't happen because of food we were eating out there. It happened because of some bad food that we got from a restaurant, and so that was kind of frustrating. And I had a couple of pretty low points as well. I never really got sick like that, but there was, after several days of road walking, it can really take its toll. And we had to do a road walk essentially from, let's see, the west end of Curacanti Reservoir, all the way through Gunnison and then up to almost Crested Butte. And afterwards, I was feeling okay, but we started to climb up to Pearl Pass, and man, I had some of the worst shin splint pain I have ever experienced in my life. And without having stopped and taken some painkillers and getting some electrolytes in me, and Luke helping with some stretching and kind of me rubbing it down and stuff like that, it was pretty severe pain, and it slowed me down quite a bit. I think we ended up coming up maybe 10 miles short of where we expected to that evening, because I couldn't keep the pace.
Yeah, hiking with shin splints is terrible. You never
Yeah,
want to wish that on your worst enemy.
yeah, it really is. I mean, anything involving pain in your feet or your legs or anything like that, where every step sort of punctuates the pain, that it's really tough to do. It takes its mental toll after a while.
Yeah, it turns a joyous occasion into a miserable one really quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's take a quick message break and hear from the folks that help make this show possible. I'd like to thank our sponsor, Fume, for sponsoring the Adventure Sports Podcast. Fume is a flavored air diffuser that you can breathe through. It's not vapor. Instead of electronics, it's completely natural, has no harmful chemicals, no carcinogens or anything like that, but can help you break a bad habit. Because not all parts of a bad habit are bad. And Fume helps you do just that, helps you enjoy and replaces that bad habit with being able to breathe through the fume and avoid some of the hangups that breathing in chemicals and vapors can have on your lungs. Right now is the best time to start the good habit with Fume. All orders for the month of January have buy one, get one cores, which you put inside the fume, so you can stock up for the New Year's resolution. Plus, as a listener of the Adventure Sports Podcast, you get an extra 10% off when you use the code ADVENTURE. Head to tryfume.com, that's tryfum.com/adventure, and use the code ADVENTURE for an additional 10% off, plus buy one, get one cores until January 31st to help make starting the good habit that much easier. A lot of the adventures we have on this show requires international travel and oftentimes a new language. Although there's plenty of adventure in just winging it, it really helps and can enrichen the adventure if you go prepared, learning some of the language before you go. And that's why I'm excited to be partnering with Babbel. And so if you're looking for a science-backed language learning app that actually works and works fast, that you don't want to pay hundreds of dollars for, a private tutor, or learning a language that actually is in a way that's not truly the way it's spoken, then you need to try Babbel. Babbel's convenient courses have helped me learn real-life conversational skills in different languages, so it's easy to learn how to order food, ask for directions, speak to someone at a store, without having to consult an app which you might not have service for while you're out on an adventure. So with over 10 million subscriptions and 150 scientists that have helped create this app, here's a special limited-time deal for our listeners. Right now, get 55% off your Babbel subscription at babbel.com/ASP. Get 55% off at babbel.com/ASP. Spelled BABBEL.com/ASP for Adventure Sports Podcasts. Rules and restrictions may apply. That is plenty of that for now. Let's get back into the episode.
So you were telling me that you're involved with Big City Mountaineers. You want to take a little bit of time to explain what that is?
Sure. So Big City Mountaineers is they're a nonprofit, and what they do is they take kids who would probably not otherwise have an opportunity. These are urban kids that grow up in the city and don't really have an avenue to get outside and have wilderness experiences. But they take kids out for week-long wilderness mentoring programs, and they're great for a lot of these kids. It's the first time they've been outside and experienced nature. For a lot of them, it can be a life-changing experience. I think anybody who enjoys the outdoors probably can look back to some pivotal point, some experience where they went outside and saw or did something amazing, and it affected them, and they wanted to do it again. And so Big City Mountaineers, really does provide that for a lot of kids every year. And so we were pretty happy to be able to team up with them and raise a few bucks to help out the cause.
Yeah, that's awesome. So are these kids all around the country then?
Yeah, it's their office is in Golden, Colorado, in the mountaineering building there, but they do work in various places. If anybody wants to check out their website, it's bigcitymountaineers.org.
Yeah, to be able to get the kids out is great, because it's not only the kids that experience it, but their stories and their pride of their accomplishments when they take them back and tell their friends about what they did. I mean, that's simply infectious, to get kids excited about getting out in the outdoors and experiencing these kind of things that they wouldn't otherwise have a chance to see. That's great that you guys are involved with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the public spaces and wilderness areas of this country are one of our great treasures. And, if you live in America, they're your birthright. So for them to be able to help some of these kids get out there and experience it is pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll get those the links to those sites put up on the show notes so people can click through and check that out and hopefully help out if they feel that they can.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, hey, every dollar counts, and if you're one of those people that does the tax exempt stuff, all your donations to them are tax exempt.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if you can't donate, then maybe think about getting involved and helping out with this organization and get kids out there somehow.
Yeah, well, I mean, the way that we did our fundraising was through their Summit for Someone program, and then a lot of people raise money for them every year with it. So if you're interested, if you're going to go climb a peak somewhere, if you're going to go do a cool trip, whatever it is, check out Summit for Someone and see if maybe it'll be a good fit for you.
Right on. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
How would you say that hiking, climbing 14ers, doing the hiking that you do, how is that a good benefit for society?
Well, honestly, anybody who goes out into the wilderness and has a nice hike, they're going to come back smiling. And I mean, at just a fundamental level, there's that. If you took anything else away, people that go out and hike and come back are going to be at least nicer for a couple of days, right? So I mean,
would think so.
there's that. I think that it also serves as inspiration. Anybody that does something that involves long distance human powered stuff, I find to be kind of inspirational. And so it's always kind of cool for me when I hear about people doing things with their bodies, taking them over long distances. And I think that anytime you do a big trip, the people that you come across, the people that you hike with, it ends up motivating people to be more active and to be more involved with sort of the natural world. And I think that can only be a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think also, I mean, when you've got people that do things like use their trips as a catalyst to basically shake down their friends and family for some donations for worthy causes, I mean, that's a direct financial benefit for a lot of nonprofits and things like that. So, I mean, there's a lot of people that do that with their annual climb of Rainier or Adams or whatever it is. And, those types of trips, they don't just produce nice memories for those people, but they actually do produce a tangible result as far as, dollars, really.
Well, it's a great opportunity for people to help out that maybe don't want to go up a 14er or have the wherewithal to do it. It gives them an opportunity to feel good about themselves as well.
Yeah, I mean, it honestly makes them part of the trip. Every time that we got into a town and we were checking our email or something and we'd see that another donation had come in for BCM, we would get pumped. I mean, that was part of our experience was getting those notifications that people were donating, and that would pump us up. So in a very real way, when people are donating to their friend's climb or trip, or the charity for their trip, it helps motivate.
So, what kind of tips would you have if somebody were thinking this guy makes it sound fun? I think I want to go try it myself. What would your advice be for somebody to get up and do it the first time?
I mean, first of all, I'd say talk to any of your friends that do this kind of stuff at all. If you've got friends that climb 14ers at all, talk to them. If, for instance, you want to get into specifically climbing a 14er, go to 14ers.com. Tons of information there. There's also a lot of great groups on Facebook, for instance, for local hikes. You've got Meetup, which is also a nice resource for people that are trying to get involved in a new activity. So yeah, I mean, look around at your local resources and also your friend and acquaintance group to see who's already kind of doing the stuff that you want to try doing. And usually people are happy to take you along. If you're like, hey, I want to try out backpacking, don't really have all the gear, but I'd want to go out for maybe a night or two. A lot of people have a spare sleeping bag and a backpack and stuff like that. So yeah, reach out to your friends in your social circles and see who can help, and go online to some of those great resources as well.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to find too many people in this sport or related sports that aren't interested in lending a hand and showing you the ropes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not like you're asking somebody to show you their totally sweet morel mushroom patch, which if anybody has one near Boulder, you please write in and tell me.
That's hilarious. That's funny. All right, so how about a funny story? Did something happen along the way that we can leave the listeners with a smile on their face?
Well, there was the time we sort of wished a pizza into existence.
All right, I'll bite.
Yeah, so that was kind of an interesting day of bonuses. We left Fairplay intending to go up to the base of Mount Sherman. We were going to camp out, and in the morning climb Mount Sherman and then continue on the way. We all of a sudden found ourselves at the base of Mount Sherman, and it wasn't even noon. So we thought, well, let's go for it, So we went up, got to the top of Sherman, and it started to rain and kind of snow on us. And it kept raining for the entire rest of the day. So we got down to the base, and we thought, well, it's early enough in the day. Let's go ahead and just keep making some miles and see how far we can go ahead and get today. And the whole time we were talking about like, oh, I wonder if that pizza place in Fairplay will still deliver out here, and we could set up our tarp here and just order pizza, So we were joking about pizza, several times throughout this day, and then just before we got to this main road that was going to take us into the little town of Alma, this truck pulls up and this guy offers us a ride, and we politely decline and explain to him that we can't take rides because we're walking all of the 14ers.
Right.
And he's like, huh, no kidding. He tells us his kids are climbing Quandary earlier that day, and tells us that he's going to buy us a pizza. So we're like, yeah, okay, sure. So he goes, yeah, you guys are going into South Park, go to this, or into Alma, go to the South Park Saloon and tell them Joel sent you, and I'm going to buy you a pizza. So we're not real sure whether, like, whatever. We figure, oh, okay, cool. I start laughing. The guy pulls off, and we walk the rest of the way into town. The sun comes out just in time to set. We go into town, go into the saloon, and sure enough, the bartender asks us, who sent us and what he looked like and what kind of car he was driving and stuff. And we got free pizza and a couple of drinks out of it. So it was pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Man, that's awesome. That's awesome. You guys run across a lot of people that are offering helping hands on these hikes, from what I understand, right?
Yeah, I mean, people are friendly. Contrary to what people see on the evening news, people by and large are friendly. And when you're doing something that people think is cool, offering a helping hand is a way that you become part of that trip. So I think people are prone to offer help. There's definitely still that spirit of welcoming strangers and travelers, you know. So it's alive and well, I assure you.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. So I also wanted to mention you have a website that details a little bit about this trip. It shows the route that you guys took and a little bit of descriptions and photos from the trip. And I wanted to point that out to people. It's 14ersthru-hike.com, and that's 14ERSTHRU hike.com. I'll put the link on the show notes as well so they can take a peek at that. It's a phenomenal journey, and man, good for you guys for accomplishing that. That's huge.
Yeah, and absolutely. I did want to actually mention too that there is a fellow who is going to be attempting to do a modified version of our route this year. He'll actually be starting on Friday. I think that's the Friday the 10th.
Yeah.
So yeah, check him out. He's also going to be trying to raise some money for a children's cancer charity. So, if you're so inclined, definitely check him out as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, good deal. Junaid, thanks so much for spending a little time with me on the podcast. This sounds like a great trip, and I hope to hear about the next endeavor that you guys launch out on.
Absolutely. Well, me too.
Right on. Well, I appreciate your time. Have a good night.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me.
First of all, thank you so much for listening. It means the world to us that you choose to listen to this show. If you'd like to help us further, you can leave a review on iTunes, share us with your friends, your family. It goes a long way to grow in the show. You can also support us financially through patreon.com/adventuresportspodcast. Link is in the show notes. And also, if you have an idea of who could be a good guest for the show, we're always looking for people to tell their story about the outdoors or adventure. So if you know someone, please reach out. Email us at info@adventuresportspodcast.com. And until then, get out there and have some fun.